Hey everybody, Edo here, and many moons ago, I made a video called 5 Great Game Mechanics. And it was actually, if I'm not mistaken, the first League of Gamemakers video I did. And the idea there was, wouldn't it be cool to introduce myself by talking about really important games and games mechanics that I enjoyed or thought was interesting. And it may not have been the first, but I think so. And it's turned into one of my most popular viewed videos, and one that continues to get comments and views years later. And the power of comments, somebody was like, you should do another one of these. And I was like, sure, I'll do another one of these. I actually, at the time, it was just like, here's 5 mechanics I liked. It wasn't like at the top of the list or bottom of the list, but I did it. And so I'm going to do it again. And hopefully it's interesting. And if people really do like this, I'm happy to do it. There's so many awesome mechanics out there. I've played so many games. But let's just jump in, right? So I'm going to go through 5. I'm missing 1 box, but I'll get to that when I get to it. So let me start with King Domino. Actually, it's King Domino and 5 tribes. And this is Bruno Cathala. The mechanic here is initiative drafting, or initiative turn order drafting, or turn order selection. Bruno Cathala has done this in a number of games, but it's done by other people as well. But King Domino is like the quintessential, just make the entire game on that mechanic almost. Basically, the idea is that when you're placing a unit or making a selection, this does come up in worker placement games, but typically in a worker placement game, it's the first player token, not the entire order of players. But in King Domino, you are collecting tiles, and with those tiles, you're building a domino tiles, like 2 wide squares, like a rectangle. You're collecting those and building out an area in front of you, like your little kingdom. It looks like that. But when you're selecting the tiles, you have them lined up, 4 tiles, and like in a 4-player game, you're gonna have 4 units, and 1 for each player. And when you select the next tile, you're not only saying, I want that tile, but you're also selecting the turn order for the next round. So it's what you're gonna get and what order you're gonna go in. It's a super simple system, but what I have found is it's so easy to put it into games, especially if there's any sort of selection going on, that it adds this great dimension of choice. It adds a great dimension of choice because not only are you picking something you want, but you're so clearly setting up the structure of the next round and thinking about what's going to come. It gets your players thinking ahead and in a positive way. I mean, it can create a little AP, but as long as you're not like making multiple turns in a row, it's super powerful. And I also like it because it gets rid of a fixed turn order, it gets rid of sort of first player advantage in many cases, and it works really well. King Domino, again, one fantastic game, top flight, awesome family, 20-minute fun, great. It's like that mechanic and whatever, kingdom building or area building or whatever, and it works splendidly. The reason I grabbed 5 Tribes, another one of my favorite games, another game by Bruno Cathala, actually he's getting a lot this video, but it's just because he's awesome. 5 Tribes has it as well, but in 5 Tribes you are selecting, it's not limited to how many people there are. There's a line, and you're basically bidding for how much you're willing to pay to go first. So rather than being in conjunction with an action, it's in conjunction with amount you're willing to pay to get that advantage, which works well in this game as well. And it's a good way to sort of, if somebody really wants to go first, they're going to pay for it. Again, worker placement games have this, but typically in a worker placement game, it's a first player token, not all the player order. I really like it. I think there's an opportunity to take this mechanic into so many games. I don't think it needs to be limited to worker placement or limited to Bruno Cathala games. I think you can use it all over the place. And It's possible that there's a game in the future from Pencil First Games that uses something like initiative turn selection, but there's lots of ways to do turn order that's not and like not just always the same, but I really like this. So that's mechanic number 1. Let me push this away. Shall we get Bruno out of the way? Why don't we get Bruno out of the way? Mechanic number 2, it's from Longhorn. Hey wait, another game by Bruno Cathala, and just to make the triangle 5 tribes, you thought I was going to talk about the Moncala pick up and drop off, move around thing. That's sort of, there's that sort of mechanic existed in Longhorn as well, and so like this is maybe I think this came first, but like this is the simpler version of 5 tribes, and maybe King Domino goes to Queen Domino. But that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about here is you are collecting cattle. This is a scoring mechanic. You are collecting cattle in this game. You're collecting a resource. And it's like inverse value, where the value of a resource is based upon how many of that resource remains unobtained. So there's 9 black cows, 9 gray cows, 9 white cows, and 9 orange cows. And if I get 1 of the orange cows and there's 8 more remaining, that 1 is worth 8 points. If I get 2, each of those cows are now worth 7 points, but 7 plus 7 is 14. Somebody else gets 1, that's worth 6, my 2 are now worth 12. And so what is wonderful about that mechanic from a scoring perspective is it, in a game where all the resources are the same, they're all cows, they're just different colors, it has a dynamic value and a sort of way of planning and playing around score that's not just around pure accumulation and pure... It's a dynamic value. The value of it's changing. It's market-based. I'm sure there are a lot of games that have stocks in them and other systems that have a similar value where the value of something's changing. There are many, 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 many worker placement and other games where you actively influence the value of something for you or for all players. Like, hey, I'm buying axes and there's this... axe quality, and like if we put points into axe quality, each axe is worth more points. Based like there are ones where the players are actively pushing, but this removes a second thing. Just the act of taking is affecting the value for you and for other players, and I just think it's smart. It's just a nice way of collapsing maybe perhaps 2 mechanics to get a dynamic result into 1. It's sort of like getting your turn order from another action that's just leaves the tokens in the order they need to be. This means that your scoring is dynamic and sort of market-based, and you're collecting and selling cattle, right? So it's appropriate, but it's market-based, but without having to have a big market. And it works, and I think there's lots of ways you can use this, and I would like to see it used in ways beyond scoring. I think there are some cool, dynamic ways you could use it around creature ability and power and fighting and battle that like could have a really fun tug-of-war surprise strength defense dynamic. So again, it's another mechanic. This is an older game. I thought great 2-player head-to-head game. Excellent. None of these, all these games are high on my list. That is Longhorn. Let's talk about these 2 games. Biblios by Steve Finn, and Herbaceous by Steve Finn. Design. Hey, Pencil First Games, my company, published this one, right? But if you've played this Biblios, which is an amazing game, you know, and if you've played them both, you know that the mechanic, this is the ultralight version of this mechanic. And what it is a type of push your luck, a card-driven push your luck, sort of bird in the hand versus birds in the bush dynamic. In Biblios, there's a deck, and what you're doing is you're drawing a card and deciding, do I want it for me? Do I want it for my opponent? Or do I want to set it aside for an auction later? Dun, dun, dun. the trick is, most games have you do that kind of assortment when you get all the cards, you see all the options, and you're choosing. This is totally different. This is, I see the first one, I make a decision. Is it behind door number 1, door number 2, door number 3? I don't get to see door number 2 or door number 3. I just see, hey, there's a Ford Escort, or a Ford Explorer in door number 1. Door number 2, chocolate cake, or is door number 2 a vacation home, right? Like, and you don't know. And so you have to make these decisions on that limited information, and it makes the act of drawing super rich, super valuable. And now in Biblios, there's like the value of things. There's a dice in the middle, and you're moving them to change the value of different sets, different color suits, if you will. And then there's an auction phase and all that. I think, much like King Domino, Steve demonstrated, I mean, the difference between Biblios and Herbaceous is not the difference between 5 tribes and King Domino. That'd be like a bigger one. But in Herbaceous, Steve took that same dynamic, that same mechanic of draw a card and make that decision, but instead of 3, he took it to 2. Draw a card. Do you want to keep it for yourself and for yourself only, or are you going to put it in the middle in a pot anyone has access to? For you or for everyone. But you're not going to be able to get it until everyone else has a chance to maybe take it from you. So there's this risk. There's no guarantee you're going to get that other card. So it's like, do I want this, or do I want the next thing? And it's this micro decision. It's very quick, but it's stimulating. It really is an interesting choice. And it's a powerful way to add dynamic tension into a small moment. And I think it can be used in lots of different ways. I think it can be used in combat. It can be used in goal selection. It's like, just think for a second the difference between draw 2 goal cards and pick one of the 2. Oh, like think of it from a time perspective. I've got to look at both goal cards. I need to decide if I want to, I got to look at both goal cards, and I need to decide which one I want, what the dynamic is. If I go for this one, I have to do this, this, this. I have to do this equation. Then I have to look at the other one, do this equation, evaluate, make a decision, pick one, and put it under, right? Same thing, goal cards, but I'm drawing 1, and I have to decide, do I want this? And I can very quickly see, I get this, or the unknown. Known or unknown. Once I say, no, I'm going to keep the known, I don't need to see the unknown. I put it underneath. Or if I keep the known, or do the reverse, after I've selected this card, turn can continue because there's no more choice. You could imagine it to create dynamics in a drafting game, or like, again, imagine normally in a drafting game you're passing around hands and picking your one and passing around. But like, what if you didn't get to see everything? What if you grabbed a hand but you only got so much? I mean, it's a different feel. I really think this is a great mechanic. And Steve Finn with Biblio's Dice was in the last video. Dude's awesome. And I think Herbaceous has demonstrated just how strong it can stand on its own with just tossing some set collection. Much like King Domino, that initiative order selection bit can, turn order selection can stand on its own. I think there are some powerful game mechanics that can. So, this. Oh, last little thing here. Keith Mateka from Thunderworks Games did the solo play, and super interesting, what he did for solo is he brought back the 3 cards. So in solo, one for you have to decide, or it goes to the middle, which can get wiped in the solo game, or it gets trashed and no one gets it. And you have to go through the 3 in the same way you did in Biblio, so it's this really odd journey. All right. Game number 4, or mechanic number 4, better said, is not from Tokaido. We'll save this one for last. This other one is actually from a game I just did a Kickstarter preview for from Keith Mateka called Lockup, a role player story. And it's a worker placement, sort of area control game where you're minions in a prison and doing all sorts of stuff. He had a goal card system in that game, or has a goal card system in the game, I really liked. And it's not totally unique, but it just, at the start of the game, you deal out 3 goals. I don't remember, one was called like instant, leader, end game. He's got names for them and they sound fine. But basically the idea is, one goal is 5 victory points or whatever, goes to the first player to accomplish this. It's a race condition. You've seen games with that type of goal system. The second one is a King of the Hill, where, or whatever you want to call it, the longest road, where this is awarded to the player with the most X. And when that changes, somebody surpasses, it changes hands. First one's permanent, first one gets it, they won, second one changes hands. And then this third goal is an end of the game condition that I think some of them may have been like all players who accomplish this goal, but many of them were just the player who has the most X or Y or whatever gets this, but it's at the end of the game. And what a wonderful staccato, like balance of beats between like a fast, a medium, and a long, and how they play through. Like Catan has endgame conditions and things you can earn during the game. But for me, this idea that there's a fast race, hot potatoes, sort of king of the hill, and then a final condition really creates these different dynamics and choice structures over the length of the game. It creates this entry point for goals throughout the game. There's that one you're racing for. There's that one you can get, but then you want to keep. And then there's that one at the end. I think it's a great way to handle goals. Like, I've been thinking back and thinking about any game that has end game goal win conditions, if it wouldn't be better with some of these. Like Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride has individual goals, and then they have like the longest road at the end of the game. The player with the longest road or the most nodes, or there's 2 of them, Globetrotter and whatever. But like, you could imagine Ticket to Ride having like, first one to do this map, this is an open one for anybody. Person, whoever has the most, cars left. Oh, I mean, like, you want something that can change, but maybe a number of cars touching New York. Or, like, Ticket to Ride might not be a great example. But the point is, it's better than just having end goals, I think. And I think many games that just had end goals would even do better to have some of these. You got to balance it. But really cool. And I shipped him back the game because he had to send it to another reviewer. That's why I don't have it. Last up. Tokaido. Tokaido is just a splendid, splendid game, world-renowned, amazing art, amazing design. The mechanic in Tokaido, and it's been in other games, but most famous in here, and it's a different way of doing turn initiative, so I guess there's a lot of connection in the selection of games. I should see if I can do this again. In Tokaido, the person, you're walking down a line, you're walking through a path, and the person who's in last place always goes. And so everyone's sort of moving ahead, trying to get the next value point, but whoever's the furthest gets to go. So if somebody jumps ahead to get lots of value, it could mean that a player behind them gets to go, but the player behind them can go slowly. So if I'm at space 1, and the leader's on space 2, they could move to 3, and I could move to 2. Or if they move to 7, I could go to 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's this tension, there's this freedom and tension on it. And it's a turn order dynamic that, again, you don't just see if it's fixed clockwise turn order. There's this ability to run ahead at a cost and then deal with that on the backside. And this would be harder, this is a little harder to put into a game. Like I feel like you need to really structure your activity around it. But I like this mechanic so much because it breaks a harder rule. it sort of breaks this rule that it's like everyone gets a turn. We take turns. After everyone's turn's done, the next one. At the end of the game, we all will have taken 15 turns. There are some hard in blocking points, but one player could just be like, I want to go all the way to the midway point and beyond. And in total, they'll lose, but they could maybe finish the game in 3 or 4 like jumps, where somebody else might take 15 or 20. That's like a really dynamic difference, but there's just like accordion effect that's going on and a pressure effect that is this really compelling dynamic on a system that you're not used to having that kind of accordion effect on in that way. Doesn't hurt that it's zen. Doesn't hurt that it's gorgeous. And there have been many games that have done it. But I think, again, these are mechanics that sit on their own, but also I feel like could be leveraged in such awesome ways in other games. You could tweak it and do it in ways, you know, it's sort of a bidding mechanic, or an overspending mechanic, or you know, you could imagine resource tracks and risks to taking lots of power, but then that allows other people lots of opportunity behind you. But the freedom to say, I'm going to go all the way. The freedom to say, I want all my turn right now. And I don't want to go slow is so cool and so gorgeous in this game. So there you have it. Another 5 great game mechanics. Turn order selection, inverse scoring, or dynamic value on resource selection scoring. Bird in the hand, bird in the bush, push your luck, micro push your luck, but where you not get to see what's happening next. Goal cards with different cadences or value resolution points, and this sort of slinky dynamic turn order based on position as opposed to the player in the last position, and in a way where there's enough room in the position that means the last player can get. Like, sorry to come back to this for one second. It's not that it's just the last player goes first. It's not. That is in more games. But last player goes first, but then everyone still gets a turn. And then if the last player is still in last, they go again, but they don't get this is last player goes until they catch up to the previous player. And there's value along the way, unlike golf, where it's just taking you more swings. Anyway, hope this was awesome. If you guys like it as much as you like the other one, I mean, I have lots of board games. There's lots of mechanics. I could do more of these. Certainly, let me know, and if there are great game mechanics I'm missing, let me know. Or if you want it to be like themed, or I don't know. Happy to make videos. So, thanks a lot. Hey everybody, Edo here, and thanks for watching Gaming with Edo. Reviews over here on this playlist, League and Insider videos over here on this one. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But most importantly, play some great games. Thanks. Bye.